Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to the early 70s. We're going to be taking a look at John Prine and he's going to be performing Sam Stone. And we're going to watch this the whole way through because it's one of those songs that I think has to be heard in one go. But let's get John on screen and see how he gets on.
Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in the conflict overseas. And the time that he served had shattered all his nerves and left a little shrapnel in his knee. But the morphine eased the pain and the grass grew around his brain and gave him all the confidence he lacked. With a purple heart and a monkey on his back, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pitchers have big ears, don't stop to count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sam Stone's welcome home didn't last too long. He went to work when he'd spent his last dime, and Sammy took to stealing when he got that empty feeling for a $100 habit without overtime. And the gold rolled through his veins like 1,000 railroad trains, and eased his mind in the hours that he chose, while the kids ran around wearing other people's clothes. There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pitchers have big ears, don't stop to count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sam Stone was alone when he popped his last balloon, climbing walls while sitting in a chair. Well, he played his last request while the room smelled just like death, with an overdose hovering in the air. But life had lost its fun, and there was nothing to be done but trade his house that he bought on the GI Bill for a flag-draped casket on a local hero's hill. There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pitchers have big ears, don't stop to count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios.
And there we have it. One of those songs and performances that leaves you in that place of thinking, and that's what great songwriters do. So we've got this classic country folk progression, major bass chords. I think there's an A minor in there, but predominantly major. So the backing is uplifting, but then that is contrasted by the lyrical content, which is of a serious nature. And playing wise here, John's got that thumb pick on and playing fingerstyle, also not playing the same sequence the whole time. He really does change it up and occasionally throw in a little hammer on in the middle of a picking sequence, but then also on the low E string, he does have that thumb over the top to supply the root note of what would be the F chord, but also to do a little run up to the G, he'll play what would be the open E string and then the F sharp with the thumb, and then come in with the G in the standard position with his third finger in order to then give him access to that G7th up on the top, that first fret of the high E string with the first finger. But all of the things that are involved here, there's a lot going on, playing and singing at the same time. I always say that you can up the difficulty when you're talking about fingerstyle players because of the sequences that they go through. John's a great example here because he nails it the whole way through. So we've got this common C to G change with the thumb hopping from the A string down to the E string and also to the D string, supplying a constant running bass line the whole time. The other thing that is going to be going on is this constant change in tempo so that we get an ebb and flow to the performance where the singer-songwriter, just playing with an acoustic guitar, have got total control of where they're going with their sound and how to change that flow. If they want to increase the tempo and get a little bit more excitement in the sound, then they can do. Or if they want to take their foot off the accelerator and decrease that tempo, it's now going to make a particular part of the song stick out. And because it takes longer to deliver it, it means the audience has got longer to digest that information. And this is something that guys like John know how to do expertly, so that the ebb and the flow to the performance is perfectly matched by the lyrical content and the message of the song. He does say before he starts performing that he wrote this song a couple of years ago. Obviously this is the early 70s, but he did serve in the army during the Vietnam War, and this was one of those songs that you can definitely tell was written from his experiences and the things that he went through during that time, but also being able to relate to his fellow servicemen at that time. And it is serious in nature. I know that John has a lot of songs that are more light-hearted as well, and people can relate to them on many different levels. And the song that I was listening to earlier, which was In Spite of Ourselves, that was with Iris Dement that I was watching the performance, and there's so many little parts in that song where you get a little bit of a laugh from the audience because there are little funny points that John will bring up, but he also had this in his locker to make a serious statement. It's also the choice of words and the way that John puts it across, having that talking quality to the delivery of the vocal as well. But lines such as "there's a hole in daddy's arm, that's where the money goes" is so descriptive. And when you know that it's about drug addiction and using drugs, it's such a strong image. And almost coming from the point of a child who doesn't really understand what's going on, but just knows that that's where all the money does go. And also relating it to war and veterans who had come back from war. And even in the Civil War, there was something that happened where they'd get addicted to morphine because of the pain of injuries, but also morphine as a drug just for taking away so many different pains. But that was known as soldier's disease. I think it's more directed towards the direction of heroin addiction than morphine, but it's something that is a very serious topic, obviously, and something that would fly under the radar in everyday society, that you've got people who have been serving, and when they come back to everyday life, it is so crazy. And I've seen enough interviews with servicemen and women who have come back and had to make that adjustment to having to fight for your life every single day to then going to a supermarket and buying milk. It is so crazy, the difference. Sometimes it has been the case that when people return back to their country, having served in the army and trying to protect that country, there are people that might be anti-war activists who then focus on the servicemen and women to direct all of their protests against. So they're having to deal with that when they come back from some of the horrific things that they must have seen. But John is a musician who can give you such insight to the situation because he was there, and he can just tell you firsthand. I always say about songwriters where they are telling you a story and hearing it from them, you know that that is the source. They are literally putting their heart out in front of you and telling you a story that they have experienced. And when that is the case, it is so much more engaging. I've said before about top songwriters and their ability to make you think, but not tell you what to think, and also make you think about things that you wouldn't have thought about before, and potentially see it from a different angle if you had been thinking about a particular issue. And this is something that will always be seen as politically based because it is forcing people to question. The link to this video is going to be in the description below as always, and this is coming from John's official channel, so we've got the lyrics underneath the video as well, which I suggest watching the video and just reading along with the lyrical content, because sometimes when you are a guitarist and some of the stuff that John does with the hammer-ons and some of the phrasing and the way that he changes the sequences with his right hand, you can start to focus on the guitar playing elements, whereas when you really want to plug in to the meaning of the song and the message, reading at the same time takes the analysis out of the equation. It certainly does for me. John has that confidence on the fretboard to play fingerstyle, deliver the vocal at the same time, and he did start playing the guitar at age 14, and his brother helped him out learning to begin with, and he was a mailman for 5 years, and this was after he served in the Vietnam War, which I mentioned earlier. But he used to play at open mic nights when he was a mailman, and originally he would just go there to spectate and watch other people play. But then I think somebody said to him, "Do you think you can do better?" And maybe they were slightly angry at John for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, John thought that he'd get up on stage and try and emulate what these guys were doing. And it turns out that he was a great songwriter. And this is something that Roger Ebert, the movie critic, first gave John a review, and it was the first ever review that John had, and Roger said that he was a great songwriter, so it gave John that boost of confidence to get up there and start writing songs. So we're talking about the late 60s, very early 70s here, where John would be performing in and around Chicago and was performing with his friend Steve Goodman, who he wrote a lot of songs with. He was discovered by Chris Christopherson, and Chris, who knows how to write a song, said that they should break John's thumbs because he was such a great songwriter, jokingly, of course. But then John signed with Atlantic Records and released his debut album, self-titled album, in 1971, and that was a massive success and a critical success as well. So John released 2 more albums over the next 2 years. In 1972, it was Diamonds in the Rough, and in 1973, he released Sweet Revenge. And in 1974, he co-wrote a song with Steve, and that was called You Never Even Called Me By My Name. And it's interesting because John didn't take a royalty from that song, he just gave it all to Steve. And that's something that's unheard of in nowadays music industry, just co-writing a song and allowing the other guy, who's your mate, to take all of the royalties from it. But that's what happened, and it just so happened that Steve bought John a jukebox from the royalties that he got from that song because it was a massive hit for David Allan Coe. In 1975, he went on tour, and this was the first and only time that he went on tour with a full band. And in 1979 is when he released Pink Cadillac, and interestingly, that was produced by Sam Phillips, who was the founder of Sun Records, and his name pops up quite a lot on this channel. At that time, he didn't do a lot of production work, so it was rare to get Sam in the studio, but he did produce on that album. In the 1980s, John continued to write and record. He set up his own record label. Various artists were covering John's songs at this time, and the Highwaymen, the country supergroup, released The 20th Century Is Almost Over, and that was another song written by Steve and John. In 1991, he released The Missing Years, years, and this was a collaboration with Howie Epstein from the Heartbreakers, and everyone who knows Tom Petty knows who the Heartbreakers are, but that was a very successful album as well. In 1999, he released In Spite of Ourselves, and this album had one original song on there, but the rest of the songs were covers. And this also tied in with a movie that he starred in 2001, and that was called Daddy and Them, and that song, In Spite of Ourselves, was on that movie soundtrack. In 2004, he did his own version of Stephen Foster's My Old Kentucky Home, and that was on a compilation album called Beautiful Dreamer, and that was a Grammy-winning album. In 2005, he released Fair and Square, and that was also a Grammy-winning album. In 2010, there was a tribute album that was released, and that was called Broken Hearts and Dirty Windows, the songs of John Prine. And in 2016, he released For Better or Worse, and this featured some top female vocal talent. 2018, he released The Tree of Forgiveness, and he also is on tour at the moment. In fact, I think this weekend he's playing in Scotland, so he's still out there, still performing. He was also inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2003, and anyone that's listened to John sing for a long time will know that his voice did change. Unfortunately, in 1998, he was diagnosed with cancer, and they removed a lot of diseased tissue from the right-hand side of his neck, and his voice did change after this. He then had a little bit more rasp to his vocal tone, and in 2013, he had cancer in his left lung and underwent surgery to remove that cancer. But 6 months later, he was back touring again, and like I said, he's still going now. We'll be playing this weekend. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one.